There are some football nicknames that are jokes, and then there are nicknames that become a burden. When Napoli fans started calling Khvicha Kvaratskhelia Kvaradona, the world laughed at the size of the comparison. Diego Maradona was not just a footballer in Naples. He was a religion, a revolution, a memory the city never stopped protecting. So when a young winger from Georgia walked into Napoli in 2022, nobody was supposed to touch that shadow. Not a kid from Tbilisi, not a player most casual fans could barely pronounce. Not someone who had come through Georgia, Russia, Dynamo Batumi, and then arrived in Italy without the global hype of a superstar. But then the ball started moving. And suddenly, Napoli did not look like a team waiting for history anymore. They looked like a team being pulled toward it. By May 4th, 2023, after a 1-1 draw away to Udinese, Napoli were champions of Italy for the first time in 33 years. The last time they had felt that, Maradona was still the face of the miracle, and that is the contradiction. People thought Kvaradona was just a nickname, but maybe it was something deeper. Maybe Naples had recognized the same thing before the rest of Europe did. A player who did not just beat defenders, a player who changed the emotional temperature of a club. Maradona was not right about Kvaratskhelia because he gave some famous prediction. That is not the story. The story is that Maradona had already taught Napoli what certain players look like when they arrive. They do not arrive quietly. They arrive with chaos. They arrive with imagination. They arrive with the feeling that something impossible might happen every time they touch the ball. That was the prophecy, not a quote, a football language. Naples had lived that language before. They knew what it felt like when one player made the whole stadium lean forward. They knew what it felt like when a city that had been ignored by the powerful North suddenly found a player who made them feel chosen again. And Kvaratskhelia gave them that feeling. In August 2022, he entered Serie A like a player who had skipped the adaptation period. Defenders tried to show him the physical reality of Italian football. He responded with hesitation, acceleration, body feints, and a strange calm in crowded spaces. He was not just fast, he was unpredictable. He did not attack in straight lines. He changed rhythm. He waited. He invited contact. Then he escaped, and Napoli understood before the world did. This was not just a winger having a good few months. This was the return of danger. The reason Kvaratskhelia felt different was not only because he dribbled. Many players dribble. The difference was what happened to the team around him. Under Luciano Spalletti, Napoli became one of the most beautiful attacking sides in Europe. Victor Osimhen stretched defenses with violent runs behind the back line. Piotr Zielinski, Stanislav Lobotka, and Andre Frank Zambo Anguissa gave Napoli rhythm through midfield. But Kvaratskhelia gave them imagination. He received on the left side, and the whole defensive structure shifted. Fullbacks backed up, center backs stepped across, midfielders cheated toward him. One touch from him created fear before anything had even happened. That is rare, because the best attackers do not only create chances, they create panic. In the 2022-23 season, Kvaratskhelia became the symbol of Napoli's Scudetto charge. He scored, assisted, carried the ball, broke lines, and gave the supporters a new emotional identity. Napoli were not just winning. They were dreaming out loud, and the partnership with Osimhen became devastating. Osimhen attacked space like a storm. Kvaratskhelia created the storm. One pulled defenders backward, the other pulled them sideways. Together they made Serie A feel unprepared. That season ended with Napoli's third league title, their first since 1990, their first since Maradona, and that is why the nickname mattered. Kvaradona was not saying he was Diego. Nobody is Diego. It was saying he had given Naples back the one thing it had been missing for 33 years, belief. But this is where football usually makes its mistake. The world thought the question was simple. Could Kvaratskhelia repeat one magical season? But the real question was harder. Could he evolve after the world learned how to defend him? Because after the first explosion, the game changed. Opponents stopped giving him space. Fullbacks stopped defending him alone. Midfielders arrived earlier. Double teams became normal. Every touch came with a plan against him. And that is when the misunderstanding began. People thought the problem was that Kvaratskhelia had cooled down. But the real problem was that his environment had changed. Napoli, after the title, was no longer the same machine. Spalletti left. The rhythm shifted. The team lost part of its certainty. And when a winger depends on movement around him, the collapse of structure becomes personal. Suddenly, the same dribbles looked harder, the same decisions looked slower, the same player looked less magical. But football was not watching closely enough. Kvaratskhelia was not losing his gift. He was being forced into the next version of himself. Less chaos, more control, less instinct, more intelligence. He had to learn when not to dribble, when to release the ball earlier, when to come inside, when to slow the game down, when to become part of the system instead of the entire explosion. That is not decline, that is evolution. And PSG saw it. When Paris Saint-Germain signed Kvaratskhelia from Napoli in January 2025, it was not just a transfer, it was a test. Because Paris is not Naples. In Naples, he was the miracle. In Paris, he had to become a weapon inside a machine. Luis Enrique's PSG was moving away from the old superstar model. The club no longer wanted a team built only on individual celebrity. It wanted pressing, structure, sacrifice, and collective movement. That could have exposed Kvaratskhelia. Instead, it revealed him. At PSG, he was no longer just glued to the left touchline. He could rotate, he could come inside, he could connect with Ousmane Dembélé, he could combine with Désiré Doué, he could attract defenders and release space for others. And that is where the story changed. The player once seen as pure chaos started becoming a player of control. Against Bayern Munich in the 2026 Champions League semi-final, that truth became impossible to ignore. In the second leg in Munich, PSG drew 1-1 and advanced to the final on aggregate. The early PSG goal came from Dembélé, after Kvaratskhelia helped create the opening. That was not a random moment, that was the point of the whole journey. The Georgian kid who once arrived in Napoli as a surprise had become a player trusted to hurt Bayern in a Champions League semi-final. Not because of nostalgia, not because of a nickname, because his game had grown. He could still dribble, he could still destroy a defender in isolation. But now, he understood the next action. The pass after the dribble, the pause before the acceleration, the movement that makes the whole front line breathe. The world saw a winger, but what it missed was a system breaker, a player who bends the defense so someone else can finish the sentence. Maybe Maradona was right in the only way Maradona could be right, through the shadow he left behind. Because Naples did not call Kvaratskhelia Kvaradona because he was equal to Diego. They called him that because he made them feel something they had not felt in a generation. And that is the real legacy of this story. Kvaratskhelia was never supposed to be the next Maradona. That would be impossible. He was never supposed to carry another man's myth forever. He was supposed to prove that football still has room for players who arrive from outside the obvious map. Outside the usual hype machine, outside the places where superstars are expected to come from. Georgia to Napoli, Napoli to Paris, surprise to expectation, chaos to control. That is the journey. And now, every time he receives the ball for PSG, the old question returns. Was the nickname too heavy, or did it reveal the truth before the rest of us were ready? Because maybe the world was not ignoring Kvaratskelia's talent. Maybe it was ignoring his transformation. And maybe that is why this story feels so powerful. The world saw a player living under Maradona's shadow, but football saw something else. A player slowly learning how to create his own. So, here is the question. Is Kvaratskhelia already one of Europe's most dangerous big-game players? Or is this still just the beginning? And if you want the next story, watch how another superstar was misunderstood not because he lacked talent, but because the world never understood the burden he was carrying.